Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan El-Khouri. This is the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. Today is January 5th, 2024. It is now 457 days that 100 people, including 2 young children, women, and elderly, are still in Hamas's brutal captivity. Tell Hamas and their backers, let them go now. Have you heard? Hamas just shot a rocket at one of the humanitarian aid crossings. Since the beginning of December, over 1,200 humanitarian aid trucks have entered the Gaza Strip through that crossing. Why would Hamas shoot at the aid for Gazans? Hamas wants to make it too dangerous to bring in aid. Hamas has been shooting at aid since the beginning of this war on October 7th. Hamas shot aid convoys. Hamas stole aid. On October 7th, Hamas attacked water and electric connections to the Gaza Strip. Hamas knows that when it stops aid, the UN and co. attack Israel for blocking aid. Here's how it works. Hamas is losing the war against Israel, so Hamas is trying to win a war against Gazans. Hamas attacks Gazans, so the world will attack Israel. Hamas thinks international pressure will stop Israel from defeating Hamas and allow Hamas to gain rule in Gaza. Those pressuring Israel instead of Hamas encourage Hamas to keep punishing Gazans. Hamas wants everyone to suffer. Hamas cannot be allowed to govern Gaza the day after the war it started. The day the war in Gaza ends is the day after Hamas. Did you hear US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's recent interview? He said some very important things. Secretary Blinken explained that Hamas doesn't free hostages because there's pressure on Israel. He said, Hamas won when they saw Israel under pressure publicly. They pulled back. Whenever there has been public daylight between the United States and Israel, and the perception that pressures was growing on Israel, we've seen it. Hamas has pulled back from agreeing to a ceasefire and the release of hostages. Secretary Blinken called out the world for focusing on Israel and ignoring Hamas. He said, you hear virtually nothing from anyone since October 7th about Hamas. Why there hasn't been unanimous course around the world for Hamas to put down its weapons, to give up the hostages, to surrender? I don't know what the answer is to that. I do have to question how it is we haven't seen a greater sustained condemnation and pressure on Hamas to stop what it started and to end the suffering of people that it infuriated. Secretary Blinken also said Hamas is holding up a deal. What we've seen time and time again is Hamas not concluding a deal that it should have concluded. He said Israel, on various occasions, has offered safe passage to Hamas leadership and fighters out of Gaza. Where is the world? Where is the world in saying, yeah, do that, end this, stop the suffering of the people that you brought on? Global pressure on Israel encourages Hamas to keep the hostages. Global silence on Hamas encouraging Hamas to keep the hostages. Hamas hears the world telling it to keep the hostages. I couldn't have said it better myself. The resistance movement still has bright future. That's what Iran's foreign minister said. I'll translate that. Resistant movement is jihadi speak for Iran's global terror proxies. He also threatened a widespread war. And Iran's foreign minister also said Hezbollah is rebuilding. That means Hezbollah is still trying to shed blood in Israel, in Lebanon, and in Syria. Hezbollah's newest boss is also rattling sabers from his hiding place in Iran. Naim Qassem said Hezbollah's patience may run out before the ceasefire ends. Iran's been waging a multi-front war to destroy Israel, to burn the whole Middle East down. That's why Israel's foreign minister said, if Hezbollah does not withdraw beyond the Litani River, there will be no agreement. And Israel will act on its own to ensure the safe return of the northern residents to their homes. Israel has been degrading Iran's proxies, front by front. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, the Assad regime in Syria. Israel's people are safer. The rest of the region is safer. But Iran and its murder partners will keep trying to kill us. They will only stay down if the world keeps them down. The world must continue supporting Israel against Iran's global war. Iran and its proxies remain a threat to Israel and the whole world. Now, let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
Thank you, Jonathan. Our first question comes from Rhett on Instagram. I heard that Lebanon's airport authorities actually inspected a flight that landed from Iran after reports that it was carrying major sums of cash for Hezbollah. Do you think that this is for show, or is Lebanon serious about stopping Hezbollah this time?
This is a fantastic question. Thank you very much for asking it. As we've seen, this airplane that was flying from Iran to Lebanon, it was reported that has a pile of cash that basically Iran wants to send to Hezbollah and their proxy inside of Lebanon. The Lebanese authorities are trying to do everything in their power in order to maintain their borders secure and to end Iran's control over Lebanon by its proxy Hezbollah that are controlling some territories still today inside of Lebanon. I am really hopeful that the Lebanese authorities are not doing just for show. I heard from many Lebanese and many Lebanese politicians that their end goal is to make sure that Hezbollah is not being able to rearm, rebuild, and threaten anyone else, not just us Israelis, but also my fellow Lebanese citizens that are suffering under Hezbollah's rule. I really hope that in the upcoming days, there should be elections for the president of Lebanon. Some of the candidates have really vocalized their desire and need to end Hezbollah's weapons from inside of Lebanon and end the threat that Hezbollah is maintaining over Lebanese and the whole region and the whole territory, and that they are facing for a brighter future. This is Lebanon's chance. I really hope that this action would lead to much more wider actions against Iran's deliberate attempts to rearm and resupport Hezbollah again. So thank you very much for this question.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Talia on Instagram. Do you have any more details on the raid on Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza?
Thank you very much, Talia, for this. Yes, as we mentioned before, the Kamal Adwan Hospital is an official military hospital. Per official social media and press, the military in Gaza Strip is Hamas's terror army. Over 240 terrorists, some of whom participated in the October 7th massacre, were caught there. The hospital was directed by a physician who is also a senior Hamas officer. The previous hospital director was also a senior Hamas officer. News reports from the troops on the ground, as reported by the Israel's channel N12, news says that the hospital actually was a Hamas base that used patients as props. Some terrorists were disguised as women. One terrorist disguised himself as a woman holding a real child. Yeah, you heard that right. Multiple Hamas murderers posed as sick people, including with fake casts. That's why Israel's forces had to start interviewing all the sick people there. Investigators said it was made to look like a hospital and patients were brought there just for appearances. In reality, there are entire sections meant solely for the entry of Hamas's terrorists. They added that there were explosives, ammunition, and weapons, and hostage issues were managed from there for Hamas. Hamas set up operation rooms inside the hospital where no civilians ever entered. And I really hope that the entire world will understand that at the end of the day, Hamas uses everything in its power to use hospitals, schools, like we've seen numerous times, also UNRWA schools, in order to hide their weapons, hide hostages, and make sure that they operate from within populated territories, like we've seen that they have done in Gaza, but we also seen how Hamas is being active also in the West Bank, where they are also using civilian infrastructure for their own terrorist gain in order to just threaten anyone and tell the world when Israel responds, hey, look what Israel is doing. I hope that the whole entire world will understand that this decoy is just a decoy and not a real threat for any people that are injured in Gaza.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Maya on Instagram. I heard Hamas released a video of hostage Liri Albug. What are the feelings in Israel after the publishing of this video?
The feelings are basically about Liri Elbag. She's a 19 years old. She is one of the 100 hostages being held in Hamas terror dungeons for 457 days. Her family asked not to share the whole video. While these signs of life tear at our hearts, which is Hamas's goal, they also remind us of how evil Hamas is. We cannot live side by side with the kind of sadism that Hamas is. As we've said before, Hamas wants a deal which allows Hamas to survive, rebuild, and do more kidnappings and massacres in the future. Hamas want to do October 7th again and again, but the people of Israel need the war to end with never again, with Elbag and all of the hostages back to their home immediately.
Thank you. This is our final question from Ron on Instagram. Do we know how Hamas is still such a problem? Didn't the IDF break up every battalion?
This is one of the major things that at the end of the day, Hamas operates in many different ways. One of them is they're trying to rebuild and regain again their support. A lot of them were hiding in those terror tunnels for the last year and a half almost. And this is something that at the end of the day, they will continue on fighting and fighting till the whole international community would demand that Hamas would be 100% unable to regain its power like it was before October 7th. This is something that Israel is putting all of its pressure in order to return the hostages back home and to make sure that Hamas, that is still now trying to rebuild themselves again mid-war, will not be able to do that ever again in the capacity that they did, or ever. And this is something that is super important. I want to thank you all for tuning in and watching us live on this daily briefing. I hope to see you again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. East Coast time. Thank you very much for watching.